Let's get real for a second. Most men can hear the words coming out of a woman's mouth, but they don't know how to hear what's actually being communicated. They listen to the sentence and miss the signal. They focus on the content and ignore the context. They take words literally while her timing, her distance, her warmth, her silence, her eye contact, and her effort are telling a completely different story. And if you can't read that contrast, you'll spend years thinking women are confusing when the patterns are painfully consistent. You're not lost. You're just decoding the wrong language. This isn't about blaming women. It isn't about turning relationships into a war. It's about awareness, the kind of awareness men were never taught. Most men were trained to be polite, to be hopeful, to communicate more, to prove themselves, and to interpret every mixed signal as a challenge they can solve with more effort. But once you understand the emotional engine behind the phrases women use, your confusion disappears. You stop tripping over mixed signals. You stop waiting for clarity that never comes. You stop negotiating your self respect. You start moving with a backbone instead of wishful thinking. Because here's the truth: women rarely lie the way men think. It's not always a conscious attempt to deceive you. It's often a preference to avoid direct conflict, a preference to keep the social image clean, a preference to keep options open, a preference to protect feelings, including their own. That's why you'll hear soft language attached to hard realities. And the man who only listens to the soft language gets destroyed. The man who reads behavior stays in control. Before we get into it, understand the goal of this talk. The goal isn't to make you cynical. The goal is to make you accurate. Accuracy is power, because accuracy stops you from investing in situations that were never meant to grow. Accuracy stops you from getting played by hope. We're going to go through common lines men hear from women and translate them into what is usually being communicated underneath. Not always, not in every case, but often enough that if you learn the pattern, you'll stop getting surprised. And as we go through each one, I want you to keep one rule in your mind. Words are cheap. Effort is expensive. People reveal their truth through what they consistently do, not what they occasionally say. Now let's start with the first one. Every man has heard it at least once. I'm not ready for a relationship right now. That sentence sounds gentle. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like timing. It sounds like honesty. And sometimes it is. There are moments when someone genuinely isn't ready. But most of the time, this line means something much simpler and much colder. I'm not ready for a relationship with you. That's the part she leaves out. This line is rarely about her schedule. It's about her desire. It's not a statement about healing or goals or needing time. It's a statement about where you stand in her mind. You are not the man she feels compelled to lock down. Now pay attention to this, because it will change your life. Desire doesn't require convincing. When a woman truly wants a man, not ready turns into, when can I see you? Hesitation disappears. Effort rises. She makes room. She adjusts. She finds a way. Men try to logic their way into attraction. They think patience will earn desire. They think consistency without standards will eventually convert her. But you cannot negotiate yourself into being wanted. If she wanted you, you wouldn't be waiting in the lobby. You'd be in the building. So why does she say not ready instead of I don't want you? Because most women are conditioned to soften rejection. They don't want to be the villain. They don't want to deal with the male reaction that can come from direct rejection. They don't want confrontation. And sometimes they don't want to close the door completely, because keeping you as a safe option can be comforting. So they wrap the rejection in polite language. They package it in a way that allows them to feel kind and allows you to feel hopeful. But hope is dangerous when it's disconnected from reality. If you hear not ready, the right response is not to wait. The right response is to step back and let her show you effort. Because if she genuinely isn't ready, she will still respect you and she will still communicate. If she's using the line to keep you as emotional backup, she will keep you close but never commit. And that's the nightmare zone for men. The zone where you're giving boyfriend energy and receiving almost nothing. So treat your time like currency, because it is. Now, the second one. This one is crafted perfectly for male psychology. I don't usually do this, but with you, it's different. Men love this line because it makes them feel chosen. It makes you feel like the exception, like you unlocked something special, like you're not just another guy. But when someone has to announce their purity, their uniqueness, their I'm not like that, it's often because they're managing how you see them. It's image control. Women know, men judge. They know men interpret experience differently. They know men feel more emotionally invested when they believe they're the one who triggered something rare. So they frame the moment as special. They frame their behavior as an exception. They place a halo on the situation and hand you the credit. And sometimes they believe it in the moment. Emotions make people rewrite their own history. But you have to understand something. Patterns don't appear for the first time at 35. If she's doing it with you, she's likely done a version of it before. This line is not about morality, it's about narrative. She's telling you a story about herself that she wants you to accept. And when men confuse a story with truth, they get attached to a fantasy instead of observing reality. If a woman truly doesn't usually do this, she won't be doing it. That's the simplest truth. A man with experience doesn't argue with the line. He doesn't call her a liar. He doesn't get bitter. He just doesn't build his investment on words designed to shape his perception. He watches behavior over time. Consistency tells the truth. Now, the next one. This one destroys men financially and emotionally because men take it literally. I don't care about money. Many men hear this and instantly relax. They think, finally, a woman who values me, not my wallet. But you have to learn the difference between not worshiping money and not caring about stability. When a woman says she doesn't care about money, she usually isn't rejecting wealth. She's rejecting obsession. She's rejecting a man whose ego is tied to flashing status. She's rejecting a man who uses money as identity. But that doesn't mean she's comfortable with a man who has no direction. Stability is one of the oldest languages of attraction. Not because women are evil, because life is real. Responsibility is real. Pressure is real. And a woman wants to feel that the man beside her is not one bad day away from collapse. Women don't fall in love with money. They fall in love with competence. They fall in love with a man who moves like he can build. There's a difference between being in a temporary rebuilding phase and being resigned to stagnation. A woman can respect struggle if it has direction, but she loses respect for drift. So don't misread her simplicity as permission to stay stagnant. What she's often saying is, I don't want a man who makes money as God, but I do want a man who has structure, ambition, competence, and the ability to create a stable life. And that leads to the next line, the one that has confused more men than almost anything. I want a nice guy. Every woman says this, and yet the men they fall hardest for are rarely nice, in the way most men understand the word. To men, nice often means agreeable, compliant, conflict avoidant, always available, always accommodating, never challenging. But to women, nice usually means something different: warmth without weakness. It means a man who has empathy but also has boundaries. A man who respects her feelings but doesn't drown in them. A man who can be kind without becoming controllable. Men hear nice and think, if I treat her like a queen from day one, she'll choose me. But women don't respect a pedestal they didn't earn. A pedestal creates pressure and imbalance. It signals that you are giving value before value has been proven. That's not romance. That's insecurity disguised as generosity. A nice man without standards is not attractive. He's safe, and not in a good way. He's predictable. He's easy to manage. And that kills tension. Attraction needs tension, not drama. Tension, the feeling that you are a man with your own center. This is why women test men, not always to manipulate, but to see what your kindness is made of. Is your kindness backed by confidence, or is it rooted in fear? When you over-apologize, over-explain, over-pursue, you reveal that your kindness is a strategy to be chosen, and that kills the respect. So when she says she wants a nice guy, translate it correctly. I want a man who is good to me, but I don't want a man I can push around. I want warmth, but I also want leadership. If you understand that balance, you stop chasing. You become the center of gravity. Now the next line, this one exposes whether you're dealing with a woman who has emotional closure or a woman who's still tangled in her past. My ex means nothing to me. Men hear this and take a deep breath. Clean slate, fresh start, great. But human emotions don't vanish because someone declares them gone. Feelings don't disappear. They get buried. They get reframed. They get denied, but they still leave fingerprints. Sometimes she isn't lying to you. She's lying to herself. Denial is a coping mechanism. It's not closure. And you can spot the truth through repetition. If the ex truly means nothing, he won't keep showing up in conversation. He won't keep being referenced as a warning, a joke, a comparison, a villain, a story. People don't keep returning to what is emotionally dead. When a woman brings up her ex often, it doesn't always mean she wants him back. Sometimes she misses the attention. Sometimes she misses the power dynamic. Sometimes she's still angry. Sometimes she's still trying to prove she's over it. Sometimes she's still checking if he thinks about her. That's not love. That's unresolved attachment. Here's the danger for you. You cannot outlove unresolved emotions. If her nervous system is still shaped by old pain, you might not become her partner. You become her rehab. You become the man who absorbs the fallout from a war you didn't start. And here's the brutal irony. Sometimes the man who helps her heal becomes the man she outgrows. Not because he did something wrong, but because healing changes people. The relationship served a purpose. Once the purpose is fulfilled, the bond can weaken. This is why wise men don't compete with ghosts. They don't try to win against a past that still lives in her nervous system. They observe. Does she react to his name? Does she freeze? Does she bring him up in arguments? Does she get triggered by behaviors that remind her of him? Does she punish you for wounds you didn't cause? You don't interrogate her. You watch patterns. Healing isn't what she says. Healing is what she no longer needs to repeat. Now the next line. This one sounds innocent, even spiritual, but it can disguise a subtle form of control. I just want a man who loves me for who I am. On the surface, it sounds like vulnerability, like a longing to be seen. Sometimes it's genuine, sometimes it's healthy, but sometimes what it really means is, don't challenge me. Some women confuse unconditional love with unconditional tolerance. And many men are trained to confuse loyalty with self-abandonment. They think being solid means absorbing moods, accepting excuses, ignoring disrespect, forgiving patterns that drain their spirit. That is not love. That is a slow loss of self. A mature woman doesn't fear accountability. A mature woman can hear a boundary without turning it into an attack. A mature woman can admit flaws without collapsing into shame or blame. A mature woman says, "Love me as I grow, and I will grow with you." The unhealthy version says, "Accept me, but don't ask me to change. Love me, but don't hold me accountable. Stay, but don't require effort." So when you hear this line, you don't judge it by the words. You judge it by how she responds when you set standards. Does she respect your boundaries? Does she take responsibility? Does she improve patterns she knows are harmful? Does she communicate honestly? Or does she guilt trip you when you ask for clarity? Because a woman who demands unconditional acceptance while offering no accountability is not asking for love. She's asking for comfort without responsibility. And brother, the quickest way to destroy your spirit is to stay in a relationship where you keep shrinking yourself to maintain peace. Peace built on your silence isn't peace, it's pressure. Now, the last line, the newest, most strategic one. Women use it not always out of manipulation, but because it works on men. "I'm not like other girls." This is not a description, it's marketing. It's the psychological fast track to male trust, because men are starving to meet a woman who feels rare. So when she claims rarity, men lower their guard. They invest faster. They explain more. They forgive more. They stop evaluating because they think they found the exception. But a woman who is truly different rarely has to announce it. The moment she says, "I'm not like other girls," she reveals fear. Fear of being seen as average, fear of being judged, fear of being grouped with the very patterns she herself recognizes in women. So she differentiates herself with words instead of discipline. Sometimes it means, "I know what men want to hear. I know how to separate myself from the competition. I'm shaping your perception before my behavior reveals the truth." And here's the hard truth. Women who say this often behave exactly like the women they claim they aren't, just with a smoother presentation. True rarity shows up in behavior, not slogans. Rarity is emotional stability. Rarity is consistency. Rarity is loyalty under stress. Rarity is respect in conflict. Rarity is how she speaks about others when they're not around. Rarity is accountability. Rarity is self-control. A rare woman doesn't need a tagline. She has patterns. So when you hear this, don't get hypnotized by the promise. Step back. Observe. Let time expose the truth. A wise man doesn't fall in love with identity claims. He watches behavior. Now here's what ties all of these together. Women aren't the enemy, but words can mislead you if you don't know how to interpret what's underneath. A wise man doesn't argue with her language. He doesn't become bitter. He doesn't become paranoid. He becomes accurate. He stops asking, "What did she mean?" and starts asking, "What does she consistently do?" Because the truth isn't hidden. It's just not always spoken directly. Men get trapped because they try to force clarity out of someone who benefits from ambiguity. They try to talk their way into certainty. They try to negotiate desire. They try to prove value. They try to fix moods. They try to rescue confusion. But the man who understands women at a deeper level doesn't chase clarity. He creates standards and watches who can meet them. He doesn't cling to words. He invests in patterns. He doesn't get pulled into emotional negotiations. He stays centered. And once you learn this, you stop feeling like women are mysterious. You realize they're human. They avoid discomfort. They soften rejection. They protect their image. They keep options. They test strength. They seek stability. They chase feelings. None of that is shocking when you see it clearly. What matters is how you respond. If you hear, I'm not ready, don't wait. Step back. Let effort speak. If you hear, it's different with you, don't inflate your ego. Observe consistency. If you hear, I don't care about money, don't relax into stagnation. Keep building direction. If you hear, I want a nice guy, don't become a servant. Be warm, but have boundaries. If you hear, my ex means nothing, don't compete. Watch for unresolved patterns. If you hear, love me for who I am, don't abandon yourself. Require accountability. If you hear, I'm not like other girls, don't believe the branding. Evaluate behavior. That's the difference between a man who gets used and a man who gets respected. And here's the final reminder, the one that protects you more than any romantic promise ever will. Your silence, your standards, and your self-control will save you more than your words ever will. Words are easy. Standards are rare. Most men talk. Few men hold the line. And the men who hold the line stop getting confused. They stop getting drained. They stop getting played by hope. They start living like their time matters. Because it does. If you've heard these lines before, you're not stupid. You're not weak. You were just trained to believe that good intentions and more effort solve everything. They don't. Standards solve it. Clarity solves it. Self-respect solves it. And once you move like that, you don't just understand women better. You understand yourself. You stop chasing the feeling of being chosen. You start choosing. That's when your whole life changes.